First contact and warning. The Galactic Hegemony's survey vessel emerged from hyperspace at the edge of an unremarkable solar system. Captain Zexteri stood on the bridge of the eternal dawn, his iridescent scales reflecting the light of an average yellow star. His six-fingered hand brushed across the neural interface panel, connecting his consciousness to the ship's sensors. Another primitive system, he muttered to his crew of fellow Nexari. Their species had helped forge the hegemony 10,000 years ago, and now they served as its primary exploratory force. Standard protocol. Begin cataloging. The ship's quantum arrays swept through space, analyzing planets, asteroids, and the electromagnetic spectrum. Everything seemed routine until First Officer Miralyn suddenly straightened at her station, her head frills extending in surprise. Captain, detecting artificial signals, thousands of them. And she paused, double-checking her readings. Primitive atomic fission reactors on the third planet. Class 2 civilization markers. Zexteri felt his scales ripple with interest. A Class 2 civilization was nothing special, barely able to harness their own planet's resources, still struggling with basic space travel. The hegemony had absorbed hundreds of such species over the millennia. Some through diplomacy, others through force, but all eventually accepted their place in the greater galactic order. Prepare the standard first contact package, he ordered. Let's see what we're dealing with. His words cut off as every system on the bridge suddenly went dark. For 3 seconds, absolute silence reigned. When the systems reactivated, a single message floated on every display, transmitted somehow through the ship's quantum-encrypted networks. To all hegemony forces, Earth and Sol system are OFF limits. This is your own in-law BWAR. Aiming. Zexteri felt his blood run cold. No Class 2 civilization should have been able to penetrate their systems. It should have been impossible. Track the signal source, he commanded. Sir, Miralyn's voice wavered. There is no source. It's like the message appeared simultaneously across all our systems. That's not possible. The captain's scales darkened with anger. In 10,000 years, no species had dared to threaten the hegemony so boldly. He opened a channel to Hegemony Command. Within hours, the response arrived. The Eternal Dawn was to maintain position and await the arrival of the 47th Battle Fleet. The humans' impudence would be answered with overwhelming force. Over the next 3 days, Zexteri watched as hundreds of hegemony warships emerged from hyperspace around him. The 47th Battle Fleet was one of the hegemony's finest, planet crackers, drone carriers, and neural disruptors, all designed to quickly subjugate resistant species. Fleet Admiral Vorkath, a towering chronari with crystalline armor growing naturally from his exoskeleton, took command. His hologram dominated the Eternal Dawn's bridge. "This Earth dares to challenge us," he rumbled. "We will teach them the price of defiance. Begin the approach." But as the fleet moved toward the inner system, they detected something strange. The electromagnetic signals from Earth were changing. Television, radio, internet traffic. It was all going quiet. By the time they reached Mars orbit, the planet had gone completely dark. "They're hiding," sneered Vorkath, "like prey before the hunter." Zexteri wasn't so sure. In his centuries of exploration, he'd never seen a species simply go dark like this. Most primitives either panicked and launched futile attacks or desperately tried to communicate and bargain. The fleet crossed the asteroid belt without incident. No resistance, no further messages, just silence. "Launch probe drones," ordered Vorkath. Full planetary scan. Thousands of automated probes streaked toward the blue-white planet. They never arrived. At precisely 1 million kilometers from Earth, every single probe simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no debris. They simply vanished. Before anyone could react, a new message appeared across the fleet's systems. "You were warned. What happens next is on your heads." Vorkath began barking orders, But Zexteri barely heard them. His attention was fixed on the sensor readings. Something was happening to space itself around Earth. The fabric of reality was folding. The last thing Zexteri saw before all hell broke loose was a simple truth that should have been obvious from the start. Any species that could send a warning directly into the hegemony's most secure systems wasn't primitive at all. They had merely been patient, and now humanity would show the galaxy exactly why Earth was off limits. The price of arrogance. Fleet Admiral Vorkath's mandibles clicked in irritation as space itself seemed to ripple around his fleet. The sensors on his flagship, the Infinite Dominion, screamed warnings as gravitational anomalies appeared throughout the formation. "Impossible," muttered his chief scientist, a Quilleri whose crystalline brain structure could process millions of calculations per second. "They're creating localized space-time distortions, but the energy requirements would be." The scientist never finished his assessment. A sphere of absolute darkness, about 5 kilometers in diameter, materialized in the center of the hegemony fleet. Ships that intersected its boundary simply ceased to exist, their atoms scattered across dimensional barriers humanity had learned to manipulate centuries ago. "Evasive action," Vorkath roared, but it was already too late. More spheres appeared, precise and purposeful in their placement. The hegemony fleet's formation, perfected over 10,000 years of warfare, was being systematically divided and isolated. Of the original 1,000 ships, nearly a third had already been erased from existence. And then humanity revealed their true face. Ships emerged from the spheres, if they could even be called ships. They resembled abstract sculptures more than vessels of war, their surfaces constantly shifting and flowing like liquid metal. They moved in ways that violated every known law of physics, changing direction instantly without any apparent propulsion. "Return fire," Vorkath commanded. All weapons. The remaining hegemony vessels launched their full arsenal. Planet-cracking energy beams, quantum torpedoes, dimensional shredders, weapons that had brought countless civilizations to their knees. The human vessels didn't attempt to evade. Instead, the attack simply passed through them, as if they weren't there at all. On the bridge of the Eternal Dawn, Captain Zexteri watched in horrified fascination. "They're not just advanced," he whispered. "They're operating on a completely different level of existence." The human ships began their counterattack. They didn't fire weapons in any conventional sense. Instead, reality itself seemed to bend around their targets. Hegemony vessels found their hull atoms refusing to maintain molecular bonds. Others discovered their computed systems experiencing time at different rates, causing cascade failures as quantum processors desynchronized from each other. Within minutes, the mighty 47th Battle Fleet was reduced to scattered groups of crippled vessels. Those that tried to retreat into hyperspace found their drive fields collapsing, trapping them in normal space. A new message appeared across all surviving ships. "Your combat EFFVCTIVNESS HASDEEN in U2RALIZD. You will know UND or stay and Wi-Fi Earth is OFF limits." The liquid metal ships began to change, their surfaces solidifying into forms that more closely resembled conventional vessels. A signal finally emanated from one of them, the first direct communication from humanity. A hologram appeared on every hegemony bridge. The figure was clearly human, wearing what appeared to be a simple gray uniform with no rank insignia or decoration. Their expression was neither triumphant nor angry, merely patient. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. For 3,000 years, humanity has watched the hegemony expand across the galaxy. We have witnessed your subjugation of younger species, your destruction of unique cultures, your imposed uniformity across countless worlds. We chose to remain hidden, to advance our understanding of the universe while you stagnated in your perceived superiority." She paused, her eyes seeming to meet those of every surviving hegemony commander personally. "We could have stopped you centuries ago, but we hoped you would evolve beyond your imperialism naturally." Today's demonstration was calibrated to minimize loss of life, while clearly demonstrating the futility of military action against Earth. The technology we revealed represents less than 1% of our actual capabilities. Admiral Chen's expression softened slightly. You are not our enemies unless you choose to be. Return to your space. Inform your leaders that Earth is not to be touched. Then, perhaps, we can begin discussing how to build a better galaxy, together, as equals. The human ships began to fade from normal space, their forms becoming transparent until they vanished completely. The gravitational anomalies disappeared, leaving the shattered remnants of the 47th Battle Fleet floating in the cold void. In the following days, as rescue ships arrived to collect survivors, the hegemony's leaders would face an uncomfortable truth. They had finally encountered a power that didn't merely resist their authority. It rendered that authority meaningless. And somewhere in a hidden facility deep beneath Earth's Pacific Ocean, Admiral Chen met with the Council of Defense. They'll be back, she stated simply. Not tomorrow, not next year, but eventually. The hegemony cannot accept the existence of a power greater than itself. The Council's chairwoman nodded. Then we'll be ready. Humanity has learned patience in our long watch. Let them come to terms with today's lesson. When they return, they'll discover that what we revealed was just the beginning. The Ghost Fleet. The hegemony's Grand Council convened in their citadel on Prima Centauri, the first world their ancestors had conquered. 12 supreme leaders, representing the founding species of their empire, gathered to face an unprecedented crisis. The holographic recordings of the Earth encounter played in the center of their chamber, showing their mighty fleet being dismantled with casual ease. High Counselor Vexmore, leader of the militant Chronary faction, slammed his crystalline fist on the ancient table. 3,000 years. They'd been watching us for 3,000 years, hiding their true nature, mocking our authority. The question, interrupted Silveri, the serpentine representative of the Nexeri, is not how long they've been watching, but what else they've been doing during that time. As if in answer to her words, reports began flooding in from across hegemony space. Mysterious ships were appearing near occupied worlds, vessels matching the liquid metal construction of Earth's defense force. But they weren't attacking. Instead, they were listening. On Proxima VI, a former mining colony, the human vessels appeared in orbit just as the hegemony's slave masters were about to put down another worker rebellion. The overseers found their neural whips non-functional. Their control systems simply stopped working. Within hours, the slaves had overthrown their masters. Similar scenes played out across a dozen worlds. Wherever the hegemony's grip was harshest, wherever suffering was greatest, the human ships appeared. They never directly intervened, never fired a shot. They simply created opportunities. They're dismantling our empire without firing a shot, realized Tilarax, the machine-integrated leader of the Quilleri. Every weakness, every pressure point, every suppressed rebellion, they know them all. Back on Earth, Admiral Chen stood in the Planetary Defense Command, a vast complex hidden within the lunar core. Holographic displays showed the positions of Earth's ghost fleets across the galaxy. Each ship was a marvel of human engineering, semi-organic constructs with quantum-entangled consciousness, capable of rewriting local physics at will. Phase 1 is proceeding as expected, reported her XO, Commander James Rodriguez. The hegemony's control systems are failing across their outer territories. Their subject species are rising up. Chen nodded, her eyes fixed on a particular display showing the hegemony's home systems. And their response? Exactly as predicted. They're withdrawing forces from the frontier, consolidating around their core worlds. They're preparing for a major offensive. Good, Chen replied. Let them gather their strength. Let them commit everything to one decisive strike. It's time they learned the true cost of empire. In the following weeks, the hegemony's response took shape. They stripped defenses from 1,000 worlds, abandoning outer territories to focus their entire military might into a single massive fleet. Over 20,000 capital ships, gathered for the first time since the Empire's founding. High Counselor Vexmore took personal command. These humans think they understand warfare. He raged to his assembled admirals. We conquered half the galaxy. We've destroyed entire species who defied us. We will show them the true meaning of power. But even as he spoke, human observers watched from dimensions the hegemony couldn't perceive. Earth's true defense grid, a network of 11-dimensional space-time manipulators, stood ready. The technology that had dismantled the 47th Fleet had indeed been merely a taste of humanity's capabilities. In Lunar Command, Admiral Chen received the final authorization from Earth's Defense Council. They'd committed their forces, she announced to her staff. Every ship, every weapon, every resource they could spare, all gathered into a single massive fleet. A fleet, her XO noted, that's heading straight for the trap we've spent 3,000 years preparing. Chen allowed herself a small smile. Send word to the ghost fleets. Tell our allies among the liberated worlds to stand ready. The hegemony believes this will be their finest hour, their greatest display of power. She turned to face the holographic representation of the approaching Armada. Instead, it will be their last lesson in the price of tyranny. Humanity has watched, waited, and prepared for this moment since we first detected their empire. Now, we'll show them why Earth was never their prey. The ghost fleets acknowledged their orders and vanished from normal spacetime. Throughout the galaxy, recently liberated worlds prepared for what was to come. And in the void between stars, the largest fleet in galactic history continued its advance toward Earth, unaware that every light year brought them closer to exactly where humanity wanted them. The real war was about to begin. The counterstrike. The hegemony's massive armada dropped out of hyperspace 5 billion kilometers from Earth. 20,000 ships formed into attack formations perfected through millennia of conquest. High Counselor Vexmore stood on his command deck, his crystalline armor gleaming as he surveyed tactical displays. No sign of the human fleet, reported his sensor officer. Their system appears defenseless. Vexmore's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. The cowards hide again. Begin the advance. This time, we will not be stopped by their tricks. The hegemony fleet moved forward as one, their engines creating an artificial aurora that stretched across space. They had adapted their shields based on data from their previous encounter, developed countermeasures against the humans' space-time distortions. Victory seemed assured. They were halfway to Earth when reality itself seemed to hiccup. Every ship in the hegemony fleet suddenly occupied the same space they had been in exactly 1 second ago. Then it happened again. And again. Time itself was stuttering around them, trapping them in a cascade of temporal echoes. Impossible, screamed Vexmore as his mighty armada found itself unable to move forward. Launch all weapons. Fire in every direction. The hegemony ships unleashed their full arsenal into the void. Planet crackers, dimensional shredders, quantum disruptors, the combined firepower could have sterilized a dozen solar systems. But their weapons fire seemed to curve away into invisible folds in space, disappearing into nowhere. That's when they saw it. Earth's true defense grid activated. 11-dimensional structures bloomed across space like crystalline flowers, each one larger than a star system. They were geometric impossibilities, structures that couldn't exist in normal spacetime, yet somehow did. Admiral Chen's voice echoed across every ship in the hegemony fleet. Did you really think what we showed you before was our real technology? That was children's toys compared to this. The massive structures began to rotate, each movement bending reality in new ways. Sections of the hegemony fleet found themselves experiencing time at different rates. Some ships aged thousands of years in seconds, their crews turning to dust. Others de-aged until they were nothing but raw materials. This isn't just about defending Earth anymore, Chen continued. You've had 3,000 years to evolve beyond conquest and subjugation. Instead, you doubled down on empire. Now you'll face the consequences. The human ghost fleets reappeared, but they were different now. They had shed their liquid metal forms, revealing their true nature. Ships that existed partially outside of normal spacetime, crewed by humans who had transcended traditional physical forms centuries ago. We are humanity. Chen's voice resonated across dimensions. We stayed hidden not out of fear, but because we were watching, learning, preparing. Every species you conquered, every civilization you destroyed, we remembered them all. And now we're going to set things right. The defense grid's rotation reached its peak. Space itself began to fold around the hegemony fleet. Ships found themselves being systematically cut off from each other, isolated in pocket dimensions where the laws of physics could be rewritten at will. Vexmore watched in horror as his mighty armada was literally being erased from normal spacetime, not destroyed. Something far worse. They were being removed from reality itself, preserved in temporal stasis as living monuments to the price of tyranny. Your empire ends today, Chen declared. But unlike you, we don't destroy civilizations. We transform them. From across hegemony space, reports flooded in. The ghost fleets were systematically dismantling the Empire's infrastructure. Not through violence, but through something far more powerful. They were giving the subject species access to technologies that made the hegemony's control systems obsolete. Quantum communication networks that couldn't be monitored, energy sources that couldn't be controlled, manufacturing technologies that made scarcity impossible. The tools of freedom, distributed to all. On his rapidly dissolving flagship, Vexmore finally understood. The humans hadn't prepared a defense against the hegemony. They had prepared to completely reshape galactic civilization. This is humanity's gift to the galaxy. Chen's voice echoed one final time. Not conquest, not subjugation, but the freedom to grow, to learn, to become something more than what you were. The age of empires is over. The age of transformation begins. The defense grid completed its work. The mighty hegemony fleet, the greatest concentration of military power the galaxy had ever seen, vanished from normal spacetime. Not destroyed, but preserved. A permanent reminder orbiting Earth in dimensions beyond normal perception. The hegemony's age of conquest was over, and humanity's long-planned reconstruction of the galaxy had finally begun. A new order. 1 year after the hegemony's defeat, the former imperial capital of Prima Centauri hosted a very different kind of gathering. Representatives from over 1,000 species filled the ancient citadel where the Grand Council once ruled. But this time, they came not as subjects, but as equals. Admiral Chen stood before them, her form shifting between physical and energy states, a display of humanity's transcendent nature that no longer needed to be hidden. The Great Chamber, once a symbol of oppression, had been transformed. Quantum fields allowed every species to perceive the environment in ways comfortable to their biology. Former slaves sat alongside their former masters, all equal in the new order. The galaxy stands at a crossroads, Chen began. For 10,000 years, the hegemony enforced unity through dominance. That age is over. But what comes next is up to all of you. Above the assembly, a dimensional window opened, showing the preserved hegemony fleet orbiting Earth in its higher dimensional prison. Not as a threat, but as a reminder of the path not to take. Humanity remained hidden for 3,000 years, not just to prepare our defenses, but to understand every species in this room. Your cultures, your dreams, your potential. We saw how the hegemony's oppression stifled innovation, forced conformity, and crushed unique perspectives that could have enriched all of us. She gestured, and the dimensional window shifted to show various worlds across the galaxy. On each planet, former hegemony subject species were adapting humanity's gifted technologies in unique ways, creating innovations that even humans hadn't conceived. This is what freedom looks like, Chen continued. Not chaos, but creative diversity. Each species bringing its unique perspective to solve universal challenges. Already, your combined innovations are taking us all in directions we never imagined. The images showed examples. a former slave species using quantum engineering to heal devastated ecosystems, another developing new forms of dimensional travel based on their unique perception of reality, former hegemony enforcers turning their military expertise toward exploration and discovery. But with freedom comes responsibility. Chen's voice grew solemn. Humanity will not rule as the hegemony did. We will not enforce peace or dictate progress. Instead, we offer partnership. Our technology, our knowledge, our experience, all available to any species ready to join in peaceful cooperation. From the assembly arose Silveri, the former Nexeri representative to the hegemony's Grand Council. And what of those who choose not to cooperate, who wish to rebuild empires of their own? Chen's form solidified fully, meeting Silveri's gaze directly. Earth's defense grid remains active, as do our ghost fleets. We will not tolerate the rise of new tyrannies. But we also won't impose our will through force. Those who choose isolation will be left to develop on their own path, provided they don't threaten others. The dimensional windows shifted again, showing Earth itself for the first time to many in the assembly. Not the seemingly primitive world the hegemony had first detected, but humanity's true face. A planet transformed by technologies so advanced they appeared magical, its population living in harmony with nature while exploring realms beyond normal spacetime. This is what every world can become, in its own unique way, Chen explained. Not a copy of Earth, but its own expression of advanced civilization. The technologies we shared are tools, not chains. How you use them will shape the galaxy's future. She paused, looking across the assembled representatives. The age of empires is over. The age of exploration, of true exploration, not just of space, but of possibility, begins. Humanity extends its hand in friendship to all who wish to join us on this journey. Over the following months, a new galactic society took shape. Not an empire, but a federation of equals. Species that had been mortal enemies under the hegemony discovered they had more in common than they'd known. Former slaves became teachers, sharing perspectives that centuries of oppression had failed to crush. And humanity. They continued to watch, but now openly. Their ghost fleets became centers of learning, sharing knowledge across the galaxy. Earth's defense grid remained, not as a threat, but as a reminder that freedom required eternal vigilance. The hegemony's preserved fleet continued its endless orbit around Earth, a museum piece in dimensions beyond normal sight. But fewer and fewer species came to view it. They were too busy building something new, something the galaxy had never seen before, a civilization founded not on power, but on the combined potential of all sapient life. In her lunar command center, Admiral Chen watched the galaxy's transformation with satisfaction. 3,000 years of preparation, she mused to her staff. And finally, we've achieved what force never could. Genuine peace through understanding. The age of empires was over. The age of exploration had begun. And humanity's long wait in the shadows had finally produced the galaxy they dreamed of creating.
Chen opened a communication channel to every hidden facility in human space. The encryption was quantum entangled, making it impossible to intercept or decode. Her message was simple, but it carried the weight of 50 years of preparation. This is Admiral Chen aboard the Earthbreaker. The Titan Forge project is now operational. Begin Phase 1 of the Reckoning Protocol. It's time to remind the galaxy why they were right to fear us. Across human space, ships began to move. Not just the Titan-class vessels, but thousands of smaller craft that had been waiting in the darkness for this moment. Humanity's true fleet was about to reveal itself, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Earthbreaker cleared the asteroid field and began its approach to hyperspace. In 12 hours, it would arrive at Kepler 442, where the Kalari Third Expansion Fleet waited in comfortable ignorance. They would detect what appeared to be a rogue asteroid entering their system, perhaps worth investigating for mineral content. By the time they realized what they were actually looking at, it would be far too late. Chen stood on the bridge of humanity's first Titan-class warship and smiled. The galaxy had taught her species a valuable lesson 50 years ago about the nature of power and survival. Now it was time to return the favor. The stars ahead held no warmth, but they would soon burn with the light of human vengeance. Asterisk when Titans walk among stars. Captain Marcus Webb had never wanted to be a weapon of mass destruction. Standing on the bridge of the Stormwall, humanity's second Titan-class vessel, he watched the tactical displays with growing unease. The ship around him was a marvel of engineering, a testament to human ingenuity and determination. It was also capable of sterilizing entire star systems with a thought. 3 days had passed since Admiral Chen's Earthbreaker had made contact with the Kaleri Third Expansion Fleet. The engagement, if it could even be called that, had lasted exactly 4 seconds. The Kalari had detected what they believed to be a large asteroid entering their system and had dispatched a patrol squadron to investigate. The Earthbreaker had waited until the alien ships were within optimal range before revealing its true nature. The recordings were being broadcast across every communication channel in the galaxy. Webb had watched them dozens of times, and they still made his hands shake. The moment the Earthbreaker's camouflage had dropped, revealing the impossible bulk of the Titan-class vessel, the Kaleri communications had shifted from casual inquiry to screaming terror in less than a second. The singularity cannons had fired once. The entire Kalari fleet, including their mighty dreadnoughts, had simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not vaporized, but erased from reality itself as localized gravity fields, exceeding those found at the event horizon of black holes, had compressed them to mathematical points before allowing them to collapse back into normal spacetime. The message that followed had been broadcast in every galactic language, transmitted with such power that it had overridden emergency channels throughout civilized space. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the human Titan fleet. 50 years ago, the Kaleri Empire declared war on humanity for the crime of existing. Today, we begin our response. Every species that supported the Kaleri aggression, every government that cheered our suffering, every individual who profited from our genocide will face judgment. There will be no negotiations. There will be no mercy. There will be no escape. The galaxy had erupted in panic. Webb watched the intelligence reports flowing in from human monitoring stations scattered throughout space. The Zephyrian Trade Federation had immediately recalled all their fleets to defensive positions around their homeworld. The Saurian hegemony had begun mass evacuations of their outer colonies. Even the mighty Galactic Council had abandoned their headquarters and gone into hiding. Captain, came the voice of his tactical officer, Lieutenant Sarah Kim. We're receiving a priority transmission from Admiral Chen. The Stormwall and Voidrender are to proceed to the Arcturus system immediately. Webb nodded, though his heart felt heavy. The Arcturus system was home to the Zephyrian Trade Federation's central government, a civilization of merchant princes who had profited enormously from the Kaleri's destruction of human trade routes. They had been among the first to carve up former human space among themselves, establishing trading posts on the graves of human colonies. Bring us to hyperspace, Webb ordered. Alert the crew that will be entering combat operations within 6 hours. As the Stormwall engaged its hyperdrive, Webb reflected on the strange turns his life had taken. He had been a xenobiologist before the war, fascinated by the diversity of life among the stars. His research had focused on finding common ground between species, understanding the psychological and cultural bridges that might unite the galaxy in peaceful cooperation. The Coari had ended those dreams with plasma fire and moral certainty. Webb's research station had been one of the first targets. Destroyed not for military value, but because the aliens had deemed human scientific advancement to be inherently dangerous. Webb had survived only because he had been off station, collecting samples from a nearby moon. He had watched from the surface as his life's work had been reduced to expanding gas and radiation. Like so many others, Webb had been recruited into the Titan Forge project, not for his military experience, but for his deep understanding of alien psychology. The designers of the Titan-class vessels had realized that their weapons would be most effective if they could predict how their enemies would react to unprecedented threats. The Stormwall dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Arcturus system, its approach carefully calculated to appear like a natural phenomenon. To the Zephyrian sensors, it would register as a rogue planet, perhaps expelled from another star system by gravitational forces. Such objects were rare but not unheard of, and the Zephyrians would likely dispatch survey teams to investigate potential mining opportunities. "Captain," reported the sensor operator, "I'm reading 17 Zephyrian vessels in the system, including their flagship, the Golden Prosperity. They're maintaining defensive formations around Arcturus Prime." Webb studied the tactical display, noting the careful positioning of the enemy fleet. The Zephyrians were traders first and warriors second, but they were not stupid. They had clearly learned from the Kaleri disaster and were taking no chances with unknown objects entering their space. Sir Kim continued, "We're receiving a transmission from the Zephyrian fleet. They're demanding we identify ourselves and state our intentions." "Put it through," Webb ordered. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing the elaborate features of a Zephyrian admiral. The alien skin was a deep blue-green, marked with the intricate scarification that denoted high rank in their society. His eyes, however, showed none of the confident arrogance that Webb remembered from pre-war encounters. Instead, there was barely controlled fear. "Unknown vessel," the Zephyrian said, his voice carefully modulated despite his obvious terror. "You are entering sovereign space of the Zephyrian Trade Federation. We detect massive gravitational anomalies associated with your trajectory. Please respond with identification codes and statement of intent." Webb looked around his bridge, noting the faces of his crew. These were humans who had lost everything to alien aggression, who had spent decades preparing for this moment. They deserved to see their enemies brought to account. But did they deserve to become monsters in the process? "Open a channel," Webb said finally. The Zephyrian admiral's expression shifted to one of shocked recognition as Webb's image appeared on his screen. Humans were supposed to be extinct, or at least reduced to a handful of primitive survivors hiding behind Earth's defenses. "My name is Captain Marcus Webb of the human Titan fleet," Webb said, his voice carrying across the void between species. 50 years ago, your government celebrated the destruction of New Geneva. Your trade routes were established over the graves of 2 million human civilians. Your profits were built on our genocide." The Zephyrian scarification seemed to pulse with increasing fear. "Captain Webb, the Trade Federation is prepared to offer full reparations for any historical grievances. We can negotiate a comprehensive settlement that addresses all human concerns." Webb felt a bitter laugh escape him. "Negotiate? Your people held parties when they heard about the Kaleri attacks. Your merchants competed for the rights to salvage our colonies. You turned our suffering into profit margins. That was 50 years ago," the Admiral protested. "The current government had nothing to do with those decisions. We can make this right." "No," Webb said quietly. You can't. The hidden foundries, the stars held no warmth for Admiral Sarah Chen as she stood before the massive viewport of Station Prometheus. Beyond the reinforced glass, the asteroid field stretched endlessly into the void, each rocky body hiding secrets that would make empires tremble. 50 years had passed since the Kolri Empire decided humanity was too dangerous to exist, and 50 years since the galaxy learned what happened when you cornered a species with nothing left to lose, Chen remembered. That day with crystal clarity. She had been a young lieutenant aboard the research vessel Harmony when the first alien contact went catastrophically wrong. The Kaleri, with their crystalline exoskeletons and cold, calculating minds, had arrived at Earth's outer colonies not as explorers but as They viewed humanity's rapid technological advancement as a threat to galactic stability. Their solution was simple and brutal. The images still haunted her dreams. New Geneva, a thriving colony of 2 million souls, reduced to radioactive ash. In minutes, the colliery plasma bombardment had been so thorough that the planet's atmosphere itself had ignited. Chun's younger sister Maya had been there, working as a terraforming engineer, building humanity's future among the stars. All that remained was a dead world and a message broadcast across human space in perfect Earth standard. The species designated, as human has demonstrated dangerous expansion tendencies and technological adaptation rates exceeding acceptable parameters. Colonization efforts beyond your home system are hereby terminated. Compliance is mandatory. Resistance will result in complete sterilization. The galaxy had watched humanity's response with interest. Most species, when faced with such overwhelming force, either submitted or died fighting. Humanity chose a third option. They disappeared. Within a year, every human colony ship had vanished from hyperspace lanes. Trade ceased. Diplomatic channels went silent. The sprawling network of human settlements simply evaporated, leaving behind only empty stations and the occasional distress beacon that led nowhere. The galactic community assumed humanity had retreated to their home system to lick their wounds, perhaps spending decades rebuilding their shattered civilization. They were wrong. Chen turned from the viewport and walked through the corridors of Prometheus, her footsteps echoing off walls that had never known natural light. The station existed in the heart of a carefully camouflaged asteroid, one of dozens scattered throughout the outer reaches of human space. To any scanning vessel, it appeared to be nothing more than a particularly large chunk of rock and ice. The reality was far more extraordinary. The central chamber of Prometheus stretched 4 kilometers in every direction, its walls lined with quantum fabricators and molecular assemblers working in perfect synchronization. The air hummed with the constant vibration of construction, the sound of humanity's vengeance taking shape atom by atom. Suspended in the center of this vast space, held by invisible gravitational fields, was humanity's answer to 50 years of humiliation. The Earthbreaker was beautiful in the way that only weapons of absolute destruction could be beautiful. At first glance, it resembled a small moon, roughly spherical and covered in the dark, mottled surface typical of asteroids. But Chen knew every centimeter of its true nature. Beneath that camouflaged exterior lay the most advanced warship ever conceived, a vessel that made the Kaleri's greatest dreadnoughts look like children's toys. The ship's hull was composed of metamaterials that could shift between states, making it invisible to most scanning technologies while simultaneously providing armor that could withstand direct impact from stellar-class weapons. Its power core was based on controlled singularity technology that humanity had. reverse-engineered from captured Kaleri vessels, but improved far beyond the original specifications. Where the aliens had been content with crude applications of exotic matter, human engineers had created something approaching perfection. Commander Torres approached Chen, her expression carefully neutral despite the magnitude of what they were witnessing. Torres had lost her homeworld to Kalari pacification raids 20 years earlier, when the aliens decided that even Earth's defensive installations were too advanced for comfort. Her entire family had been vaporized in the first wave of the attack. "Admiral, the final weapons systems are coming online," Torres reported. "The singularity cannons are fully charged, and the probability manipulation arrays are responding within acceptable parameters." Chen nodded, watching as the final external panels sealed themselves across the Earthbreaker's surface. The ship now appeared to be nothing more than a particularly large asteroid, albeit one with some unusual gravitational properties that most scanners would attribute to high metal content. "What's our intelligence on current Kaleri positions?" Chen asked. "The third expansion fleet is conducting standard patrol operations in the Kepler 442 system. 12 heavy cruisers, 4 dreadnoughts, and their flagship, the Unbreakable Resolve. Standard complement would be approximately 40,000 personnel." Chen felt a cold smile cross her face. The Unbreakable Resolve was the same class of vessel that had led the attack on New Geneva. "Perfect. Begin final preparations. We launch in 6 hours." As Torres moved to relay the orders, Chen allowed herself a moment to appreciate the irony. The Kaleri had attacked humanity because they feared human adaptability and technological advancement. They had been absolutely right to be afraid, just 50 years too early in their assessment. The genius of the Titan Forge project lay not just in its engineering achievements, but in its strategic planning. While the galaxy believed humanity was cowering behind Earth's defenses, human civilization had actually expanded beyond anything previously achieved. The asteroid belt facilities were just the beginning. Hidden colonies existed in interstellar space, powered by artificial stars and protected by technology that made them invisible to all known detection methods. Humanity had spent 5 decades studying every piece of alien technology they could acquire, legally or otherwise. Trade ships reported destroyed by pirates had actually been captured and dissected. Diplomatic pouches had been intercepted and analyzed. Even the quantum encrypted communications of the Galactic Council had been broken and monitored. The result was a technological leap that compressed centuries of normal development into mere decades. Human scientists had not just reverse-engineered alien technology, they had improved it, combined it in ways the original creators never imagined, and pushed it far beyond its intended limitations. The Earthbreaker was only the first of its kind. In hidden facilities throughout human space, 7 more Titan-class vessels were in various stages of construction. Each one was unique, incorporating different technological approaches and weapon systems. The galaxy would soon learn that humanity's greatest strength was not just their adaptability, but their diversity of thought. Chen made her way to the command center, where holographic displays showed the real-time status of the Titan Forge project. The images were both beautiful and terrifying. Vast construction bays hidden inside hollowed-out moons, their interiors blazing with the light of artificial suns as they forged weapons of unprecedented power. Space-based factories spinning in the darkness between stars, their outputs carefully scheduled to avoid detection by even the most sophisticated surveillance networks. The numbers were staggering. Over the past 50 years, humanity had built an industrial base that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever seen. They had done it in secret, in silence, with the patience of a species that had learned the hard way that survival required more than just courage. "Admiral," came the voice of Dr. Elizabeth Vance, the project's chief scientist. "The probability arrays are showing some interesting readings. I think you should see this." Chen followed Vance to a specialized monitoring station where complex mathematical models flowed across multiple screens. The probability manipulation systems were perhaps the most exotic technology in humanity's arsenal, based on theoretical physics that most galactic civilizations considered impossible. "What am I looking at?" Chen asked. "The quantum resonance patterns of every major military vessel in this sector of the galaxy," Vance explained. "We've been tracking them for months, building probability maps of their operational patterns. The beauty of this system is that it doesn't just let us predict where Vilbit actually influences those probabilities." Chen felt her breath catch. "You're saying we can manipulate enemy fleet movements within certain parameters?" "Yes, we can make it more likely that ships will be in specific locations at specific times, or less likely that they'll detect our approach. It's not mind control, but it's the next best thing." The implications were staggering. Not only could humanity strike with weapons that bordered on the impossible, but they could influence the battlefield itself, making their enemies more likely to make tactical errors or be caught in vulnerable positions. As Chen watched the final preparations for the Earthbreaker's maiden voyage, she thought about the message they would send to the galaxy. For 50 years, the Kaleri Empire and their allies had believed they had successfully contained the human threat. They had celebrated their victory, carved up human space among themselves, and convinced themselves that they had saved galactic civilization from a dangerous upstart species. He closed the communication channel and turned to his weapons officer. "Prepare the quantum disruptors. Target their flagship." The Stormwall's true nature began to reveal itself as panels across its surface shifted and reconfigured. What had appeared to be a dark, lifeless world suddenly bristled with weapons that seemed to violate several laws of physics. The quantum disruptors were particularly elegant in their horror, weapons that could selectively target specific types of matter and remove them from existence entirely. Sir Kim said quietly, "The Zephyrian fleet is powering weapons and attempting to withdraw." Webb watched the alien ships scramble to escape, their formations dissolving into panic as they realized what they were facing. The largest vessels, the ones that had been built with metal salvaged from human wrecks, would be the first to die. "Fire," Webb ordered. The quantum disruptors engaged with a sound like reality tearing across the Zephyrian fleet. Every piece of metal that had once been part of a human vessel simply vanished, leaving massive holes in hull plating and superstructure. Ships that had been built partially from the bones of human colonies collapsed in on themselves as their structural integrity failed catastrophically. The Golden Prosperity, the Zephyrian flagship, had incorporated the entire hull of the human research vessel Curiosity into its construction. The quantum disruptors recognized the atomic signature of human manufacturing and selectively removed it from existence. The alien ship folded in half like a closing book before its reactor containment failed. Within minutes, the entire Zephyrian fleet was either destroyed or crippled beyond repair. The survivors broadcast desperate surrender calls, pleading for mercy, offering anything and everything in exchange for their lives. Webb listened to their pleas with a heavy heart. These aliens had families, hopes, dreams of their own. They were not inherently evil, merely products of a galactic civilization that had normalized the casual extinction of inconvenient species. But they had chosen their side 50 years ago, and choices had consequences. Begin planetary bombardment, Webb ordered. Target military installations and government centers. Avoid civilian populations where possible. The Stormwall's main batteries opened fire on Arcturus Prime. Weapons that could crack moons, reducing fortified positions to clouds of superheated plasma. The planet's orbital defense platforms, built with the best technology the Zephyrians could afford, lasted less than 30 seconds against humanity's new weapons. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out. The Voidrender had appeared. In the heart of the Saurian hegemony, its reality-warping weapons turning their greatest fortress world inside out. The Titan-class vessels were not just ships, but statements of intent. Proof that humanity had not merely survived, but evolved into something unprecedented. Webb watched the destruction of Zephyrian military power with no satisfaction, only a grim sense of necessity. The galaxy had taught humanity that strength was the only language civilizations truly understood. They had learned that lesson too well. A new communication came in, this one from Admiral Chen aboard the Earthbreaker. Her image appeared on the bridge's main screen, and Webb could see the weight of command in her eyes. "Status report, Captain," Chen said. "Zephyrian military capacity neutralized," Webb replied. "Their fleet is destroyed. Planetary defenses are offline. They're requesting surrender terms." Chen nodded slowly. "Tell them we'll consider their surrender after they've provided full accounting of all profits derived from human suffering. Complete records of every human artifact in their possession and public acknowledgement of their role in our genocide. And if they refuse," Chun's expression hardened, "then we demonstrate what the Earthbreaker's stellar ignition systems can do to their sun." The transmission ended, leaving Webb alone with his thoughts and the sight of a broken alien fleet drifting in the void. Through the bridge's view, he could see the lights of other ships arriving in the system. Not more Titan-classed vessels, but the smaller craft that made up humanity's conventional fleet. Ships that had been hiding in the darkness for 50 years, waiting for their moment to return to the galaxy. The age of human extinction was over. The age of human dominance was about to begin. Webb settled into his captain's chair and began planning the next phase of operations. There were dozens of species that had participated in humanity's destruction, hundreds of worlds that had profited from their suffering. The Titan fleet had work to do. In the depths of space, more construction facilities were coming online. The 7th and 8th Titan-class vessels were nearly complete, each one incorporating new technologies and new methods of bringing absolute destruction to humanity's enemies. The galaxy had created monsters when they tried to destroy the human species. Now those monsters were coming home. Asterisk.